From 1989 to 1995, Nurse Kristen Gilbert murdered 4 of her patients at the Veterans Affairs Medical Center in Massachusetts, and she's suspected of killing dozens more. On Mind of a Monster, a podcast from ID, criminal psychologist Dr. Michelle Ward dives into Kristen Gilbert's twisted mind to try and find out why she killed her patients and how she was able to do it in front of her colleagues. She speaks with detectives, journalists, nurses, and victims' families to unpack Gilbert's life and crimes on Ward C. Listen to Mind of a Monster, The Killer Nurse, wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, I'm Wes Ferguson, executive producer of The Unforgotten. Every season of The Unforgotten is a deep dive into an unresolved case, like a murder or a lot of murders, or some miscarriage of justice. These are stories that matter to us, and with your support, we shine a light on them. Here's a quick sneak peek at Season 1, The Labor Day Ghost, just in case you missed it. This is the story of a young mom named Shelley Salter Watkins, her mysterious death in Corsicana, Texas, and why the quest to deliver justice for Shelley has gone so horribly wrong for so long.
She does not go away. She haunts all of the people involved. They regard it as a cold case, but in fact, it's still hot.
They do intimidate me for sure. Don't ruffle too many feathers. You need to be careful there. But also, 30 years later, I'm getting freaking tired now of, oh no, we're still hoping and praying that we get some sort of closure. Don't we want to find out who killed Shelley?
This is The Unforgotten. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
So welcome into a bonus episode of The Unforgotten Season 3, Finding Dolores Wolfe. Co-hosts here, Adam Rittenberg and Kyle Bonagura. And the people have spoken, and they wanted to hear more about Matthew Slick Rocha, not surprisingly, a character that we profiled extensively during the run of the show. And to do that, we have gathered his 2 sons, Matt Rocha Jr. and David Rocha, and they were nice enough to join us to discuss their father and everything that he, kind of growing up with him, and certainly his life and all the ways that he impacted people there in the town. And obviously we covered a lot about Slick's life in the show, Kyle, but with Matt and David, they have a unique perspective, having spent their entire lives around him. What were you most interested in hearing from them about their dad and what type of person he was really behind the scenes?
We had, like you said, extensive conversations with both of them over the years about their dad. Something that always stood out when we were talking to them is just like how much pride they had in being Slick's sons, right? And there were people in their lives who knew some of the stories, right, to some degree. But I think the podcast gave them a chance to kind of share more about their dad in detail with like a lot more people in their lives, and they got to really celebrate him. And so kind of hearing about what it's like to be able to go through that process, I think was really cool to hear about. And then just kind of drilling down on some more, day in the life type stories they had with Slick. We highlighted the most interesting things that, in our opinion, in the show, but, there was obviously so much more to his life and the type of person he was as a youth sports coach, playing softball, his own athletic endeavors. So yeah, like any time spent discussing Slick is time well spent.
No doubt. I mean, Slick had such an interesting early part of his life, but there was so much more that came after that. And I think both Matt Jr. and David are incredible storytellers and are able to detail just what he meant to them and what he meant to so many people around Woodland post Little Rock 9, post Vietnam, and obviously during and after everything that happened with his sister. So a lot to share there. And without further ado, here's our conversation with Matt Rocha Jr. and David Rocha about their father, the one and only Matthew Slick Rocha. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. And, not surprisingly, when we put this out there, the person that the audience couldn't get enough of and wanted to hear more about was your dad, who we referred to as Uncle Slick, but he's Dad Slick for both of you guys. So we wanted to have you on to learn more about him. And first of all, now that the podcast is out there and more people are aware of the story, how did people in your circles react to what they heard, and especially the more extensive information that was revealed about your dad?
Well, the fact that I put it on social media, so a lot of people have reached out and they're like, yeah, I remember this. I remember a little bit. And I also remember your dad being like super buffed and strong, because he was like country strong with all our peer families were mostly UC Davis professors and dentists and doctors. And here's this super brown guy with these huge biceps. Nobody knew about the military stuff until they saw it. So people have been texting me and emailing me and social media contacting me. They're like, man, I knew your dad was a tough mofo, but I didn't know. Now that makes sense with how strong the dude was and how physically and mentally tough he was. But a lot of people were just sending me text messages that just said like, wow.
The people that have watched it now, I think a lot of the people haven't watched it. They knew my father basically for his softball ability and his athletic ability. So a lot of people will always would tell me, you don't know how good your father is. Like, your father does stuff that we don't even see young guys do. I mean, he just, hit. And my father would tell me, it'd say, oh, I hit, 400-foot home run. And I'd say, sure you did, Dad. But everybody knew him for his softball accomplishments that were, apparently off the chart. But the ones that did listen to the podcast, they were like, oh my God, this is insane. Did this really happen? I said, yeah, it did. I don't think there was anything that was too surprising for me, because it's been a long time since he first told me. I think I was 18 or 19 years old. So, and then over the years, we've talked about it. And especially at the end, we talked about it a lot. So he would just kind of reiterate his stories that he had told me throughout the years. But, I think a lot of people, like a lot of my kids' friends, they're just like, this is unbelievable. That was your father? Hearing it, they're like, man, that guy was something else.
I'm curious, like, what has it been like to be able to then, share stories about your dad? Obviously, you guys have a lot of pride in who he was and hold that close to your hearts, but having the opportunity then to kind of discuss him more with people and kind of help other people learn about him. What has it been like to share those stories with your friends recently?
I've had a couple of friends reach out and just ask me about the military stuff and told them stuff that wasn't originally in there about things that he did and how he felt. Again, he told me we used to drive down the 6 hours from NorCal to see David in Ventura. And he just said he felt terrible because the Vietnamese people were small and a lot of them were teenagers. So some of these guys he killed were like 5'2", 110 pounds. They were like women. And how bad he felt that these kids weren't doing anything besides what their government told them. But by and large, like my brother said, he was, this is wild. So UC Davis in intramurals, the employees could play also. And they had a fast pitch league, fast pitch softball, right? My dad played in the fast pitch softball World Series in New York in 1963, I think it was. Took a train to New York to play fast pitch, and they won a world title in fast pitch. But I'd go and watch these games. He would be in his work clothes, which was a white t-shirt, Levi's, and Hush Puppies, with a cigarette in his mouth.
And I know he played late in life, both like certainly slow pitch, but like how late did that go in his life where he was still active in those sort of leagues?
Well, I told you about when I played fast pitch and he was 65. Did I tell you this story?
Remind me.
So I played hardball. There's a Bay Area hardball league from 30 to 35. And there was like Larry Herndon and all these pros were playing. And I never played college, but I matured late. So in the first All-Star game at 30, I was the only guy who didn't play pros or college. And I was seeing 90 for my first time. I'd never seen like low 80s. It was like that max. After that, I decided to play fast pitch softball in San Francisco. And we played all of these teams. And this one team was from Oakland. They're all African-American. And the pitcher was huge. The dude was 6'5", 220, and threw gas. I thought he was like maybe 50. It was hard to tell. We had 2 girl softball pitchers on our team. They were like in their 20s. We're all like in our 30s and 40s. Well, they couldn't make a game once. We're playing this team that would kill us. So I said, Dad, is there any chance you can come down Wednesday night? We have no pitching. I've been practicing it, but I can barely lob the ball with the full windmill. He goes, I might be able to give you 2 innings. I don't know. I said, just come down. I don't care. Just throw strikes because we can't even throw strikes. We're probably going to get mercy by these guys. They're good. So we come down. He's lobbing the ball. He hasn't done this in 20 years, but he's throwing strikes. They're way out in front. They can't hit him. They're hitting slow rollers. They're rolling it over to third. Shortstop. We win the freaking game like 3-2. So we're going through that high five line, and the pitcher, the guy was super nice. Like huge guy, dude was an amazing athlete. He looks at my dad and goes, Matt Rocha, right? And my dad looks at him completely confused. He goes, you remember who I am? I was like, I have no idea. I'm sorry. The guy was actually 65 also, the same as my dad. He looked like he was 50. The dude was muscular. He says, you don't remember you and I pitching in the regional championship of fast pitch? Like literally 40 years earlier.
Oh my God.
You don't remember you and I pitching? He goes, God, it sort of rings a bell. Who won? He goes, we didn't win nothing. I hit a solo home run off you. We walk away. I says, I can't believe that mofo is your age. You're lobbing it. That dude still throws heat. Because I sort of remember it now. That guy was an amazing athlete then. I can't believe he's still an amazing athlete at 65. My dad was just pure slow pitch at 65, but he was still hitting 300 footers at 80 over the fence, 300 feet. And he stopped it at 81 or 82 and he quit. He says, I'm not playing anymore. I can't hit it out. I go, dude, just be a doubles hitter. Right? You're fucking old as shit. He goes, that's for pussies. I'd rather not play than hit singles.
Well, shit, I play slow pitch and I'm a singles hitter, so I guess I better hang it up now.
Lately, a lot of people have started realizing how much unnecessary chemicals are all around them every day. When I started looking around the chemicals in my own home, I realized that my laundry detergent was one of the worst offenders. Did you know that traditional laundry detergent can leave harsh chemical residue on your clothes? Yeah, neither did I. Turns out most popular detergents are packed with harsh chemicals that can irritate your skin, mess up your hormones, and cause allergic reactions. You know, I don't really want that stuff around my home anymore, so I switched to Earth Breeze. Their detergent sheets are free from harsh chemicals like optical brighteners, dyes, parabens, phosphates, and preservatives. If you're looking for a powerful clean without harsh chemicals, try Earth Breeze. It's easy to switch, and if you're not completely satisfied, they have an amazing money-back guarantee. Right now, you can try Earth Breeze for up to 40% off, plus 4 free gifts at earthbreeze.com/unforgotten. That's earthbreeze.com/unforgotten for 40% off, plus 4 free gifts.
You hear that? That's not just a Toyota truck. That's the sound of no crowds, no alerts, no distractions, and no telling what you'll find next. You know, like a detour. So why would you ever take a tour when you could take a detour? Toyota trucks.
Yeah, I'm curious. Obviously, you probably noticed he was maybe physically different when you were growing up, but given what you found out about him later in life, thinking about how he was when you were growing up, did you sense there was anything different about him just from a mental standpoint? Because to do what he did, he had to be different mentally too.
I did, and I don't know if it was because he was my father, but I remember him, like my brother was saying, he had extremely big biceps. Like it seemed like it.
Like Arnold Schwarzenegger baseball in your arm.
He always was very quiet. He wasn't an outspoken guy for the most part, but it seemed like a lot of people had a lot of respect for him around him. You know, when I was growing up, people that knew him, people that even like some of my high school coaches said they used to watch him play when they were little kids Davis was a small town, so everybody around him had a lot of respect for him and talked extremely highly of him. And then on top of that, just him, looking big and looking athletic and everything. I always thought, that he had just a very quiet, but, kind of an intimidating way about him. And then people just respected him. And so for me, I always thought that it was my father. I looked up to him, but I thought that he had something else about him. And then, of course, he was in the military, but I didn't know, obviously, until I was, 18 or 19 to what level he was in the military.
Guys, we touched on it in the podcast about him coaching, the youth in the area, but we didn't get into it, extensively. Like, what was it like when he coached and how many kids and just what he was like during that time when he was a youth coach?
So my dad, it's funny because a lot of these traits I picked up from my dad, I don't even think about it. But me being the president of Little League for a long time, being a youth coach, one of the kids, my dad loved teasing people, right? But he also loved being teased, right? If it was funny, if it was clever. So he always carried the Little League rule book in his back pocket. So something happened in one of our games. He's like, oh, no. He comes out and goes, if you see right here, right? And he quotes section 7.2. Right, the umpire is probably a teenager, right? Or somebody's dad. And he comes walking back with a big grin, right? That he was right. And this kid on my team named Randy goes, good job, rule book, Rocha. So then all the kids start calling that, go get a rule book, Rocha. And he just took pride that he knew every rule and how to get around everything.
The nickname thing stuck with me too, that your dad told us when we met with him, like, yeah, he had a nickname for everyone, every kid he coached. Would those stick with him too? Would he just always default to the nicknames later in life when he saw kids around town, or like how pervasive was that part of the whole deal, having him?
Well, the funny part is I grew up with two twins, Tom and Doug Cook. They were always in our house. I met them after 7th grade, but by the summer of 8th grade, they were almost our family. They came to spend the night one weekend. They stayed for 3 weeks. At our house, we had horses, cows. We were playing wiffle ball, Nerf ball. We had guns. We had pellet guns, shotguns, 22s. We could stay as late as we wanted. We'd hide and go seek in the dark in the barn, just scaring kids. I'm still good friends. One lives in Danville by Utah. We still tell stories. But their names were Tom and Doug Cook. Couldn't be any easier to remember. So he named them after two of our male pigs that we used for breeding, which was Jethro and Homer. We'd be out. He's like, I can't tell Jethro and Homer apart. And the kid's like, who the hell's Jethro and Homer? I go, they're fucking cooks. Why do they call them Jethro and Homer? I go, he knows Doug is Jethro and Tom is Homer, but he can't tell them apart.
That's amazing.
My father had a very unique quality in that, and that he would never call anybody by, even me, he called me a Hucky Van Bozo. I have no idea why. And then it went to Van Bozo, and then it went to Van Bose, and then it was just Bose. And then, of course, my oldest son was Little Bose. And the first time he met my wife, he called her Sarsaparilla.
What?
Which lasted until the second time he saw her, and then he called her Winnemucca, which stayed with him forever. And
Winnemucca's a town in Nevada, isn't it?
Yeah. Her name's Delia, which is hard to remember, I think, for some, but I don't know if Winnemucca's any easy.
That's what I was going to say. I was like,
Right.
And then he called her Little Mucka. So he would just come up with these odd names. Like my youngest son is Bumper, because when he was little, he would hit his head on everything. So my dad just called him Bumper. And even at the end, when he was living here, and his mind would kind of go at times. But when my son would walk out, he would say, Bumper, you're the only one I can trust. It's weird, but it was always there. Even towards the end, he relied on the nicknames. And my kids, he knew their nicknames. Didn't remember what their real names were.
Amazing.
There's something else that, we addressed a little bit in the podcast was, was Paul telling us about how your dad's influence as a mentor and a coach kind of maybe steered him in the direction of coaching. Is that something you guys have talked about with Paul or your dad at times over the years? Like, how important was that relationship, you think, for Paul in terms of getting into coaching?
I think the fact that my dad was basically mellow and easygoing, and he enjoyed, because David and I and Paul being 3 and 4 years apart, he just enjoyed, I think, staying involved with sports since he wasn't playing as much. But he also just really liked kids, I think. Teasing them and making fun of them and telling them they did a good job. He would say, you can catch more flies with honey than you can with vinegar. Basically saying complimenting kids is better than riding their ass.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was never a hard coach at all. And I think that's what made a lot of kids want to play for him. In fact, one year we had lost in the championship, and the rules were whoever won the championship got to manage the all-star team. And one of the better kids in the league, his father, they won the championship. So he was going to be the all-star manager. His own son said, I will not play for my father. I will only play for Mr. Rocha. And so they ended up making my father the all-star manager. And they agreed to do it because they wanted, obviously, to put the best team they could out there. But it definitely influenced all of us. I think Paul into coaching. It influenced me and my brother. I mean, I coached 17 years in Little League Baseball and twice lost to go to the World Series to the eventual winners. I got a lot of satisfaction from that. And I think that's what I saw with my father, is that he liked being around the kids. He liked kind of joking with them and just, being in that atmosphere. And a lot of the kids I coach are coming here now. A lot of them got in the law enforcement or something. So they come here now to train with one of my sons and I in jiu-jitsu. So I still have that adult relationship with these kids. And I think that's what my father liked, is that he had the ability to kind of help mold. And he was pretty laid. I was pretty laid back too as a coach. I was probably a little bit more aggressive as my father, but it was because of the same reasons he was, because before I started coaching, I would see people within the league, even the board, taking advantage of the league for their own satisfaction to win. Like the first year I started coaching, there was a team in our league that were made up of all the board members, kids. They would win the championship every year. So my son because we are new to the league, he got put on the team with kind of all the misfits of the league. And I'm like, well, this is kind of shitty. So you put the kids that nobody else wants to coach because whatever reason, they're kind of hard to coach. Their parents are in jail, so they're never there to pick their kids or take, so they throw all these kids on one team, and then my kid, because he's new, and we ended up winning the championship and beating the board members team. And that's what kind of motivated my dad, not only to coach, but then be a different coach than the ones he was seeing.
The one thing about him, he was super ethical. And that was something he taught to us at a young age. I remember getting overchanged at the store once. Like they gave me change for a 10 when I gave him a 5. He's like, go back in there. That's going to come out of his paycheck. I said, oh, bullshit. It's not. I'm keeping it. He's like, no, you go back in. I was actually a Tom and Dad cook. So I went back in to get change for the 5 so we could split it up equally.
That's great.
That's good.
Guys, we did want to ask you, I'd love to keep going with the baseball and softball talk, but what it was like after he told you guys about his military career, because you didn't know the details until you were basically young adults. And when we talked about it in the podcast about that emotional part of it, but what was it like after? Did he gradually talk more about it? Did he clam up? Like, what was it like after that initial, this is what I really did over in Vietnam?
I had a history professor that was like an ex-Marine captain or something. And I really went back to him. I said, could this be true? Like that my dad was in Vietnam in 1957 and he was like killing these guys, paratrooping in and killing them at night. He's like, absolutely. Because I thought this seems fake. This doesn't seem real. But then after several years later, like we'd drive for hours and hours to go see my brother and he would tell me all these stories. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell any of our friends or anything. I kept it to us for a long, long time. I didn't want people to think we were crazy because it was tough dealing with everybody thinking, what's wrong with this family? Because my uncle killed my aunt. So I just didn't want to tell anybody for a long time until we got probably into my 30s. I told my good friends.
Yeah, I mean, for me, seeing the initial emotion that he showed when we watched the movie Platoon, I thought right away that, man, there's got to be something to this, because, people don't tend to get emotional. Like, I've dealt with a lot of people that made up stories. They're trying to justify whatever they did criminally, and they're telling you this story. But the thing that you see in that is their story's never quite the same. My father's was always consistent. His story was always the same, and it was always kind of hard for him to talk about it, especially when he first told me, and then when he told me again at the end of his life, sitting out in the backyard here, and he would start talking about it. It was very emotional for him. When we would talk about it, he would just kind of expand on it or tell me more detail about it. I always, I thought more about it. I asked him more questions about it over the years. I thought a lot about, wow, I mean, that must have been something else. And my opinion of my father was even higher, especially with the Little Rock thing. A lot of people have reacted to that too, like, oh my God, your father was there. Like, cause that was a big thing in our history. And so for him to actually be there and to actually experience it, and again, even in that, his story was always the same. You don't make up stories and then have a consistency in your story like he did.
Right. Well, something I thought was interesting, Dave, is that he went a long time without talking about it, right? He told us that he didn't tell anyone for several years. And to go through something like that and to not talk about it, like that impacts you in a certain way, right? However it impacted him, I don't know. But do you think that when he finally talked to you guys about it, it helped him in a certain way? Or like, what do you think he got out of sharing those stories with you guys for the next, several years?
I think it took a lot of weight off his shoulders. I think being able to share that and then maybe justify it more, he didn't feel probably the way he did when it was happening. After it was all over with, and he returned back to US, I think he struggled with it. He started realizing, like, these guys had me doing things that probably were a little unethical, even in war. Most people will tell you we weren't even there at the time, but now we know that we're everywhere.
Right.
We're always places. We just don't know about it. The media is not telling us. So I think for him, people knew my father as the kind of the mellow, level-headed guy. My brother is telling the story about him taking money at the store, getting money. I remember a story when we were at the county fair. There was a booth selling like barbecued sandwiches. It was being run by like an older group of senior citizens. So I went over there to get a sandwich, and I probably had whatever, $5 or $10, and my change was $15. So I told all my buddies, I'm like, hey, these people are giving money. I think we were probably $50 up when somehow my father found out. He took us back there and he made us give all the money back because it was wrong. It was just wrong, and that's the way he always was.
Well, I just remember one of the stories. So we had this pig farm, which is on the edge of Dixon, that had a lot of manual labor. But my friends would work for my dad. And they thought he was a character, right? Some of them had been coached by him, but they'd been around our house and seen my dad and thought he was funny. Well, one day they come back and they're like, oh my God, your fucking dad. I said, what happened? They're like, we're trying to move pigs, right? These are like 200-pound pigs from one area to another, and one pig wouldn't go. You use these boards to sort of guide them around. He's like, your dad was starting to get pissed off. This pig kept running back out of where he wanted him to go, and he lost his temper. He says, your dad just picked up the pig, wrapped his arms around him and picked him up and threw him over the fence. I said, how big was he? He's like 200 pounds. It was like a full-grown pig. It wasn't your dad with still a cigarette hanging out of the corner. He goes, God damn it. And just threw him over and then shut the game and just went back about his business completely mellow. And they're like, your dad is fucking Popeye, dude. He just threw this pig over like a 3-foot fence.
Unbelievable.
And then he says, then he was just back to drinking Pepsi and smoking cigarettes like nothing happened.
Yeah. Well, that reminded me of another story. We were working at the pig farm and my dad, it was the old days. It wasn't everybody got to carry water around with them, or you had to make sure everybody got enough food. My father would feed us like once a day if we worked out there for 10 or 12 hours. He would drive into the nearest market in Dixon and he would get a pack of bologna, a bag of cinnamon rolls or rolls,
Breakfast rolls.
and basically probably Pepsi. So one of the times he goes in there, I wasn't there. This is a story I was told, is that he was walking up to go to the store. The electric door apparently closed on a kid and everybody's going, oh my God, oh, what do we do? What do we do? And my dad walked up and basically jerked the door off the slider.
Ripped the door off its hinges and just set it down and walked in. And people were looking around like, what just happened?
For him, it was like common sense. What do you mean? What do you do? The door's squeezing the kid. You take it off, you know.
Fall is here, and with it comes cooler nights, heartier meals, and the craving for something warm and satisfying. That's where HelloFresh comes in, bringing you comforting, chef-designed recipes and fresh seasonal ingredients right to your door. This season, they've taken things to the next level with their biggest menu refresh yet. Say hello to a whole new way to do dinner. HelloFresh has doubled its menu so you can choose from 100 options each week, and now you can get seafood and steak recipes delivered every week for no extra cost. I recently signed up for HelloFresh, and I found it to be really convenient, and the recipes are easy to follow, and it's also really delicious and healthy, which feels good too. The best way to cook just got better. Go to HelloFresh.com/unforgotten10FM now to get 10 free meals plus a free item for life. 1 per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as discount on first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. That's HelloFresh.com/unforgotten10FM to get 10 free meals plus a free item for life. Hey, I'm Wes Ferguson, executive producer of The Unforgotten. Every season of The Unforgotten is a deep dive into an unresolved case, like a murder or a lot of murders, or some miscarriage of justice. These are stories that matter to us, and with your support, we shine a light on them. Here's a sneak peek at Season 2, Unnatural Causes, just in case you missed it.
Think about a loved one you've lost. Maybe a grandmother, or your father, or a beloved aunt. You believe the end was peaceful and painless. You've planned the funeral, made sure the estate was settled. You've moved belongings into storage, or sold them, or said final goodbyes on the curb. Now, imagine you get a call as much as 2 years later. Police want you to come to the station. They say what you were told about the death was wrong. They want to add your loved one's name to a list of murder victims. That's the terrible reality that at least 24 families are facing today. My name is Charlie Scudder. I'm a journalist who's been covering this case for 5 years. Together, we'll do what the police, medical examiners, senior living facilities, and more either failed or refused to do. String together evidence that points to systemic flaws in how we care for our older loved ones. You'll hear about a man who used the cracks in that system to become the worst serial killer in Dallas history. This is Unnatural Causes, Season 2 of The Unforgotten. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
But I think I told you guys, he didn't know our birthdays and didn't know how old we were after we became adults. When we were going to Tahoe for my 40th birthday, he got picked up in Davis by a friend of mine who had a new white BMW 540, expensive car. So he picks up my dad and says, hey, Slick, because all my buddies called me Slick then. After college, I was Slick. Hey, Slick Senior, no smoking in the car. All right, because we're not making it straight through, I'll tell you that. We're not going 2 hours. So everybody's like, yeah, we're going to stop and get some beer on the way up to Tahoe. So they stop at 7-Eleven, run in. He hops out, he's smoking. Some dude walks up and goes, oh, nice car. And he's like, what? He's like, you got a nice car. He goes, that's not my car. He goes, you know how much that costs? He goes, how would I know how much it costs? And the guy's like, that's $65,000 car. He's like, you're shitting me. This car is $65,000? So guy gets back in. He's like, hey, Jeff, you must do pretty good. Some guy just told me your car is worth $65,000. This is like 20-something years ago. She's like, yeah, I'm doing all right, Slick. So we get up there and we rented a house. It was my 40th birthday. There was like 8 of us. So they loved giving him shit. We're sitting around drinking beer. My dad would have a beer or two, but we're doing like tequila shots and whiskey shots, and we're just getting it going. He says, how often do you guys do this? You guys just rent houses and come up here and drink and eat? They go, oh yeah, we do it a couple times a year. He goes, what? What's the deal? Why are you doing it now? So they think he's joking. It's my 40th birthday. He says, for your kid's birthday, for Slick Jr.'s birthday. He's like, oh yeah, his birthday is in January. How old is he? And they said 40. He says, no, wait, shit, that's about right. I'm 65. I think he is. No, like, you think he is? No, he is. He is turning 40. This is his birthday. And they're laughing in the living room or a kitchen. And they're like, hey, Slick, your dad doesn't know how old you are. He doesn't even know it's your birthday. I go, I told him, he just forgot.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's so
Amazing.
When we went to dinner, Jeff picked up the check. It was like a $500 check. He's like, holy smokes. That dinner cost $500. Like, he was surprised. He goes, and he paid for it all? I said, well, we just sort of go. I'll get drinks, they'll get drinks, you'll get dinner. It all comes back around because we always hang out. Like, he's not always paying, he's just paying now.
Well, you know what Debbie Baker told me is like there was these like lunches in town in Woodland recently at the end, right, where it was a bunch of extended cousins, and she would say that your dad would pay for everyone every time at the end.
Except for the male, like if there were male cousins there, right?
Right. He would only pay for the women. If there any other dudes showed up, they got to fend for themselves.
I say he's generous. He'd give you 99 cents of his dollar if you needed it.
Well, it's funny because at the end, when we were talking, I said, hey, when did you guys stop having those luncheons with the cousins and stuff? He goes, oh, it's been a while. He goes, I think they just showed up because they get free meals from me. But, he was always that way. Like I said, when he was here at the end, I brought all his stuff down with me because I wanted to make it seem as much like his apartment as I could. So I grabbed everything. And when I got here, I started going through stuff and I found years and years of old checkbooks. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, Dad, you were spending thousands of dollars. I mean, thousands. I'm not joking. So much money. He was paying for people's bills, within the family, supporting them basically. I wouldn't be surprised if he was paying some of their rents, but that was the way he was. I mean, ultimately it was his decision to make. I said, geez, you could have left us $1 million, Dad.
He was very soft-hearted. He didn't care about money. He never got on the internet. I tried to buy him a laptop because I thought it'd be interesting for him to do research on history and things that he liked. He never, ever got on the internet. Never experienced it. One time I was there and he was a soft tart, right? So we're watching one of those, late night ESPN late night. And he says, support a kid for $15 a month. One of those deals. It's only $15 a month. Kid can eat in Africa. He's like, yeah, I'm supporting 5 of those kids. I go, what? So yeah, I write a check for $123 every month. My dad, like 5% of that money goes to the kids. It all goes to the administrators. It's a huge scam. How do you know? I'm like, because I researched it. Before I give money to anybody, I researched what percentage goes to the cause. Well, maybe they're lying. No, they're not lying, Dad. It's just...
Well, that's what I tried to tell him when he was here and I'd see all the consistent checks written. I go, Dad, how do you know this went to... He goes, well, they sent me a picture of the kids. I'm like, you've had the same picture for 10 years. Is this kid not growing?
Yeah, he hasn't aged.
The kid's a grandfather now.
I think you support their whole family.
That's amazing.
He actually lives around the corner from you in a nice house.
Right.
That's truly it. If he thought he was doing it for the right reason, as much as I would joke with him, I thought, yeah, whatever. If you want to raise these kids all over the world.
One other thing I did want to get to before we wrap this up, guys, is after Dolores's body was identified, like David, I think you said it when we talked before, that the conversation kind of shifted. It was a little bit more negative before. And then once she was identified, you said it turned positive. What were those conversations about his sister like for those last few years that he was around after she had been ID'd and he knew that he was going to have his final resting place next to her.
You know, when he called me and said, "Hey, they found your aunt," I truly thought for a second that they found her alive. Just, I guess it was hope. I was like, "What do you mean they found her?" He goes, "Well," and he told me, explained it to me. So I said, "Oh, well, that's unbelievable." But after that, you know, he really started focusing on everything that was good that happened during their life. And I think for him, that was all that was important now, is that he relived the good times that he had with her and all the good times that we had together. Because, you know, I was talking to Tom yesterday and I was saying, you know, the thing about them is they were like the two people in the room that knew the secret. You know, they were always laughing. And not that my Uncle Frank and my Uncle Ellard, well, my Uncle Ellard, he didn't have a sense of humor, but my Uncle Frank, but it's something between my tatia and my father that they knew the secrets and they were always laughing and joking and have a good time. At the end, he would always tell me the stories, the things they did together, all the good times they had. I mean, it really was a unique relationship.
With the age gap, she took care of him. She was the big sister that probably fed him and made sure he took a shower, took care of himself. She used to tell a story. He was going to a dance and he had been working out and he's all sweaty and smelly. And they made him change his clothes. At least he wouldn't get in the shower. There was air wick. It was a cotton thing that was soaked in thing. He pulled the air wick out of the living room thing and he swiped it under his arms. And she told that story all the time. "Oh, your dad smelled like a goat, wouldn't even shower, going to a dance, and just rubbed the air wick and put on a clean t-shirt."
Well, guys, we could talk all day about this, but we really appreciate you guys both for certainly helping us with the podcast itself, but also doing this and sharing other stories about Slick. Certainly somebody that, you know, we'll never forget, and I know the listeners won't forget either. So thanks again to both you guys. The Unforgotten is a free-range production. Season 3, Finding Dolores Wolfe, is written and hosted by Kyle Bonagura and me, Adam Rittenberg. The story is edited and produced by Wes Ferguson, the executive producer at Free Range. Audio editing by Aislinn Gaddis. Audio production and sound design by Austin Sisler, with Eastside Studios in Austin, Texas. Special thanks to ESPN.
Did you know we have a newsletter for The Unforgotten? It's totally free and you can sign up at unforgottenpod.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, and those are great ways to stay in touch. But the newsletter is cool because it's an email that we send straight to your inbox every time we have a new episode. You get to go behind the scenes with the series creators. We also share photos and case files when we have them. If you want, we also have a premium version of the newsletter. It's pretty cool because it lets you listen early and ad-free. So I hope you'll head on over to unforgottenpod.com and sign up for our newsletter today. Whether you sign up for the free version or the premium version, you're the reason that The Unforgotten is able to shine a light on these unsolved crimes and other cases of injustice that are so important to a lot of people. We just thank you for listening and we thank you for your support. Again, that's unforgottenpod.com.